Hi, welcome back to the Healing You Show. I'm Vanessa Harris, and we're here with our host, Gloria Lightbecker. And today we're going to follow on the topic that we introduced last time about listening. So we talk about how do we listen, and we want to unpack that a little further this week and explore more around where are we listening from,
Yeah.
or how do we listen from our heart instead of our mind.
Yes. And a nice way to maybe start on that journey of exploration is to just pause and actually acknowledge, why are we listening? You know, what is our purpose in listening? Are we even wanting to listen? Because many of the conversations that may end up seeming as if they're in conflict is there's not really an agreement to even have a conversation to begin with. So when I'm listening, I can speak from my own experience. Um, as a parent, my long term intention has always been for a heart connection. That when I'm listening to my child, I'm wanting to listen to what's really important to them, or what is it that they want to say, but they're not saying. So I'm wanting to listen in between the words and in between the nuances. Um, Another way of listening could be even um, well, I don't know. I think that actually kind of covers if you're teaching, as a teacher, you're listening to a student, like, what are they really trying to ask me? What is it they're really trying to understand? Or what are they wanting to have heard? Because there's different ways people can say that, but maybe they're not quite certain how to put their words together.
Mm. I think one of my favourite ones, an example of that, is when I hear students go, "I can't do this,"
Mm,
or "I'm bad at this," or "I hate this," or "maths is stupid," that kind of thing.
yeah.
It's listening for what's underneath those comments rather than trying to explain why maths is important, but actually hearing, I hear the struggle, or
Yeah.
I'm not confident, or I'm not comfortable with it, or I feel confronted. Yeah.
So, a way that we could continue to stay engaged in a conversation would be to say, well, can you tell me more around why this is stupid? Or can so kind of using some of the words, reflecting back what you've heard, but making an open ended question that invites a little bit more content so that there can be understanding around more specific what it is they're talking about. Because that's very general terms, all of them. They're just generalizations. And we're wanting to be able to really hear what is the experience of the person, the individual.
Mm. So what is the exact flavor or feeling or frustration, and whatever it is, exactly what that is about. So trying to help them.
Yeah.
Is it like a way of trying to get them to actually reflect themselves? Because I'm sure that when people say, I know with my kids, when they say those things, in that moment, they truly believe that they think that maths is stupid.
Yeah, so it'd be like, well, what is it that that's the hardest for you? So finding just a starting point, just small little questions to begin to excavate the territory. Is it the um, addition, or is it just the learning to do multiplication? I mean, there could be something specific that's just totally turned them around. They can't stand ratios, whatever it may be. But it's beginning to make it safe to actually have an opinion about it, to name what's frustrating. Maybe even saying, "Oh, is it just super frustrating for you?" And then seeing what else comes. Um, yeah, we don't want to pigeonhole anybody. Otherwise, it won't feel safe, and they might feel they need to be defensive. And we don't want to raise defenses. So we want to stay open-heartedly curious to actually hear what are they saying, and then maybe reflect what you're hearing them say to see whether you caught it or not. And kids are great at letting you know, no, that's not what I meant. And then they will actually give you a little bit more information.
Yes, they're a lot more direct, I find. All my children are. So, um, so what you were just saying there about, um, there's something that you mentioned as you were describing that picture, and I got a sense of, it's about where you're coming from is being open-hearted and curious and listening to what the other person is saying. that will be very difficult, I imagine. I know it is for me, when I'm just realizing when my intention when I'm in a conversation is to hear what the other person is saying, but also if I'm really wanting to be heard.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that I do my best is I want to really, when I begin to have a conversation with somebody or I'm going to enter into a conversation, is I want to check in to really tell um, who is really needing to be heard first. Because there's many times that when I'm willing to listen to my child or even to my husband or to a friend, if we both are a little bit hijacked, both a little bit agitated or whatever it may be, when I'm able to have the capacity to take time for myself first, and actually before I begin the conversation, to really understand what's underneath inside there for me. What is it that I'm needing acknowledgement around? What is it that I'm needing to have heard? And I can note it down for myself. Then I'm actually kind of put a placeholder for myself that I can be available to actually be curious about, well, I wonder what's going on for this person. But unless I take time to really unpack my own heart and be heart connected first within myself, I don't have the solid ground I need. And I might just flip my lid really easily because I'm easily triggered because I have a smaller window of tolerance.
So what I'm hearing there is that when we're triggered or we've flipped our lids and our window of tolerance is small, it is going to be much harder to listen from the heart.
Oh, yeah.
And to be able to apply these strategies and techniques, I guess you could call them. I don't know if that's the right word. Because sometimes I feel really frustrated with myself when I really have the intention of listening and then it just somehow goes somewhere else. It just diverts into an argument, usually about who's right and wrong.
Yeah. And that's really typical. So the first skill set that I would encourage our listeners to be able to explore would be really slowing down enough to unpack what's underneath, what's in that conversation. What is it they'd really like to have heard? And are they able to think about that without getting too stimulated about it? And to also have already identified what's important to them about that conversation. Another way of saying that is, what is it that they value or what is it that they need? But what's important to them about it? And then whether they actually can take the time to think about, well, what might be important to the other person? And what might this other person value or need acknowledgement around themselves? And if we can actually kind of hold those things as both equally important, we might be ready to have a conversation. If we're not able to do that, then we may need to get some individual support for ourselves until we are able to be in that place of an open heart.
So what I'm hearing there is that maybe it would be a really good idea or a strategy to practice listening skills. And I know that's something I've had to do. Really listening with empathy and understanding and heartfelt connection and open curiosity is not a natural way of being for me. And I don't believe it's a natural way of being for anybody, really. I think it's the way that we've been trained. So in order to not fall back into those old patterns of judging and assessing or giving advice or analysing, whatever it is, I have to practice these new skills. And I'm hearing what you're saying about how easy it is to get hijacked, or if the situation is tense, it would be a really good strategy to practice listening in a situation where there is no tension or upset or anything needing resolution or repair. So I just love listening to my kids sometimes just for the purpose of connecting, like just, how was your day at school? I'm just genuinely interested in how did today go. I'm not going to be a very good listener when I've had a phone call from a teacher that's told me something and I'm waiting to see whether it comes up naturally with my child. That will take a little bit more skill. But if it's just a normal day and I'm just wanting to check in, it's much easier to explore. Yeah.
Well, other ways that we could explore, ways you could explore listening is you could actually have a conversation and get really curious. And it's really fun to do this, or I think it's fun to do this as the child grows and gets older. And they may not realize this is what you're doing, but you learn so much about your child. Is you start out when they're little and you ask them, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite thing to do? You just ask them out all their favorites and you really get to know. And then you can kind of share back and forth. Oh, I think that's a lot of fun too. And so it really is a way of fostering and nurturing the relationship of trust and interest and acceptance. And then it's so fun to hear how it changes as they get older. What do you imagine you'd like to do as you're older? What would you like to spend your time with? Or who would you like to spend your time with? What's your favorite animal? Do you think you'd ever want to go to the moon? I mean, there's just so many things. Sky's the limit. But just to really foster creativity and foster impossible dreams, like, why not? Why not just support our children and our youth and our friends to dream big? Nothing stopping them except their own limiting beliefs. So when we can begin to foster these, I don't really think they're impossible dreams, but it's a nice way to talk about them, because to some people it may seem like they're impossible. But when we talk about them, it actually begins to start to change the actual frequencies within our system. And it elevates us to where we start to open new doors and new pathways for inspiration. So it's a really fun way to start practicing listening, because then you can reflect back what you're hearing, or you can kind of expand on it and as kind of like this. Would it be like this that you'd enjoy doing? And see if you're catching the wave with them. I'm wondering what you're hearing me say there.
That catching the wave really resonates with me there. Yeah, so the listening can be something that's really fun, and
It doesn't always be conflict.
yeah, it is, well, especially when you're coming from that place of genuine connection and wanting to find out what is it that you love about something, even if it's something that isn't necessarily something that you, for example, Minecraft. When my kids were little, they used to love Minecraft, and I used to just find it so painful and just I could not comprehend it. Yeah, so listening about what they enjoy about Minecraft and what is it that they like about it and what they do, it really was powerful for me, because I think what we really got down to was freedom. So asking me questions about, why does everything have to cost money? Why can't everything in the world just be free? Like in Minecraft, everything is free. You can just go and just do this and just grab all these resources. And I'm like, oh, is that what you really love about Minecraft? Is it that sense of freedom? And I don't even think they knew what freedom was at that point. They asked me, what does that mean? And I was giving them a sort of a description of this feeling. And they're like, yes, we love that. It's like they go into this world and they have this sense of freedom where they can just do as they please and be creative and get everything. And there's no have to's, and there's no, as long as they're not in that fighting mode. That's when you're in I think they call it creative mode.
Yeah. Well, and so what I'm hearing in that lovely example is how when you really listened to your children, you made that connection with their heart. And there's like, oh, it was an aha moment. And then you checked in, is this what it is you enjoyed? And then they're like, oh, yeah, that's it. So what it does is it creates that heart connection where you both get it and they feel felt and you can feel it too. So there's something very tangible about it that even though it's invisible, you can feel it and you can trust your gut with that, or trust your heart with that.
And I think, so is there something around with listening with foundations? I'm just getting present to how you set a foundation for listening with certain people, so that they have an expectation that you will listen to them, or that they will be heard, maybe. So I know with my son, he comes into me when he wants to talk about video games, which is what he goes, oh, Mum, I'm really happy. And I'm like, oh, wow, really? What? Tell me about that. And then he'll start telling me about his achievement in whatever video game that he has been playing. And it's like he's worked out a way to grab my attention, because if he just comes in and starts talking to me in detail about video games, I find it really hard to listen. But when I know it's on a foundation and he was sharing something that he really enjoys, he has my attention so much And sometimes I drift off with the detail because he can go into some it can be quite tedious for me to hear sometimes. And I find myself drifting off, and then I have to come back and go, right, what is it? As you're saying, the heartfelt, what's underneath it? Are you feeling a lot of accomplishment? Are you really feeling like competent? Did you really enjoy connecting with your friends? Was that really fun? Did you like learning something new? Like, I'm trying to work out, I don't have to understand the game. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
don't need
finding
to.
out what is it linked to, this
Yes,
action he's taking, what is it linked to that is actually the satisfaction underneath it?
yes, that's it. Because I'm never going to be a gamer. I'm never going to remember all the names of the characters and all the levels. I can't even switch from game to game, but I can grab the general essence and in this game and like pick up what it is that he enjoys about that game
Well,
compared
and
to.
then you get to know your child more because you're getting to know what they value, what they appreciate, what they're grateful for. If we can begin to hear with ears that can tune into those frequencies, then it actually fosters the connection and nurtures them to actually grow more pathways.
Mm, mm,
And I think a lot of people, even in families, conversations are all around, am I going to be made wrong or am I going to be praised? And how about we just connect instead of having to be either or, um, and explore so that I want my children especially to be able to have conversations as they continue to grow where they can stay in those that are perceived difficult because they have this foundation of knowing what's important to them and staying open-hearted and curious because maybe I'm going to have a conversation where someone shares about what's important to them. It actually moves my heart and I'm like, oh wow, I get that, and it's something I didn't get before. And then I'm actually learning with them. There's an accompaniment that happens there that now opens my world to be even more spacious that I didn't have before. So it's a gift. And I can actually perceive it that same way with others, but maybe someone doesn't want to agree with me. They don't have to. We can have conversations where we can both go, wow, that's fascinating that that's the way you perceive that. I'm wondering if you're curious about what it's like for me. And then I can actually share what it's like for me and how is that for you to hear? And
So
there's
the
a
words
whole
you used then, you said that's fascinating the way you perceive that. Um, so that in itself is to me, a really clear strategy. I don't know if it's the word, but those words are very carefully chosen. That you are acknowledging what you're hearing in them saying, but without having to agree with it or disagree with it. It's not about, well, actually, that's not correct. Do you want to hear what my opinion is because it's right, which is where a lot of people are coming from. And I think if you use those words just like as a bake-on to try and make people listen to you, and it's not the true intention of actually, people will also feel that. So, but having that genuine fascination of, right, that's your perspective. And that's really fascinating because it's so different to mine.
It's very true.
Yeah.
And I'm curious whether you'd be open to hearing my perception or my experience. And it's through the experience, the shared experience, that both people may end up with something new that they didn't even realize was possible. And that's what I love about having conversations is we lay down new pathways all the time when we can actually share in the resonant field, which when there's the resonance, there's a feeling of being gotten or feeling felt. And that makes such a profound difference rather than, oh, they're not really listening to me. They're just waiting to disagree or, or they're bored with what I'm saying. What I'm saying is not important. There can be all kinds of stories that we have in our default mode network that can kind of interrupt us and take us away from a conversation too if we don't feel comfortable and safe in our skin.
And even if, so what you were just talking about being felt and being gotten and then being comfortable and taking away, I have had friends say to me that they've avoided me in the school playground on mornings where they're feeling really fragile and vulnerable about something, and they're about to burst into tears, and it's taken all of their strength to just get in and do the drop off. And they're like, I cannot even say hello to you. If I get near you, if I get within meters of you, I know that I'll feel forgotten and I will just lose it. And I don't feel safe in the school playground to do that. So they don't even enter the conversation in the first place. So part of what I'm hearing there is it's a really big thing about safety. Learning how to listen is creating a container of safety or a space where people feel safe.
Yeah, well, it's, and right there, like where we started, is their consent. It's important to check in whether people are open to a conversation. If they're open to either share what's happening for them, or if they're opening to hear about what I'm experiencing, but to actually receive consent and ask, are you open to this? Do you have time for this? Are you willing to make time for this? However you want to say it.
Because sometimes it is not about the person not wanting to share with you or you not being a good listener. It's just a timing issue, I'm guessing. It's just not the right time. I struggle with that because it's pressing for me. I want to know what this is. I want to know what's going on with you. I want to connect with you. I'm really missing. But right now, if your head's somewhere else, you don't want to even be heard. You just want to sit there on your own.
Well, so making sure that it's something that's going to work for both of you. So it's important that I'm not dropping my needs because it's not good time for you, but to actually balance both of them. So there can be like a collaboration that's going to work for both of us. And so it's not an either or. Again, it's important that everyone matters and experiences that they matter.
Mm. Mm. I like that. It's a good balance. It's not just a matter of being a good listener is all about the other person completely and just focusing on them and their needs and if it's right for them and what they want. It's actually being a good listener is back to what we were saying earlier, listening to yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can listen to others.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I think that's a good place for us to pause right here. We might continue on this conversation. There's such a richness that we could delve into in different aspects. And yet, in my experience, when we're learning new skill sets, if we can keep them just short and sweet and we can just savor them for a while, we can begin to embody them with more ease. But if we try to pack too much in, it can feel overwhelming and it can exhaust us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how does that sound to you?
That sounds like a great place to end. And I'd like to maybe explore the language, the specific language that we can use when we're actually observing and understanding what's underneath, to give us a structure to actually know how to do that. I think actually talking about feelings and needs and observations and requests for connection and understanding, I think that really helped me.
Yeah.
That might be something we could explore in the next show or in another episode. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun conversation for us to be able to have. So if people would like to actually step in and get to practice this in community, or even one-on-one, getting some coaching around that, I invite you to reach out to me at healingyoursanctuary.com. I'd love to hear from you.
And I would thoroughly recommend that because my experience is when I've actually been heard, then I know how to listen to others just because I've experienced someone listening to me. So I think that would be a fantastic strategy to learn how to listen.
Thank you, Vanessa. I look forward to our next conversation.